Storytelling is one of the most powerful tools in your communication toolkit, yet most people completely fail to get their audience hooked. Time and again, they kill the connection without even knowing that they're doing it. I've been lucky enough to share the stage and screen with some of the world's best storytellers, and I want to give you the 5 classic mistakes to avoid. Stop doing them and you'll instantly be a better storyteller so that you can influence your audience and keep them engaged and wanting more. In this video, I'll be sharing what the mistakes are, how to tell if you're making them, and what you can do to fix them. And by the way, one of these involves a hippo, so watch out for that one. Let's get into it. Mistake number 1 is the data dump. It's when you don't even really tell a story, you just overload your audience with a series of facts and figures, information. When you're presenting data in that way without any context, it makes it really hard for your audience to follow. They think about the information and they struggle to process it because you're not packaging it up in a way that makes it really easy to consume. The biggest indication that you're making this mistake is an audience that looks bored, confused, disengaged. When people just are starting to lean back because they feel completely overwhelmed, rather than leaning in because there's something interesting and engaging to listen to. Another telltale sign is often that you get follow-up questions that show that people are just trying to join their own dots, which means that you haven't created a narrative that allows them to absorb those key points and go on that journey with you. So avoid those kind of isolated facts and think about that bigger message. What can you do to fix it? This is where less really is more. You've got to get good at stripping things back. It's much better to craft a narrative around 2 or 3 key points or ideas than to try and stack 17 different things on top of each other. It just gets too complicated. We want to give our audience what I call a blockbuster experience where they can sit down with that metaphorical box of popcorn and just let your information wash over them. You don't want to make them work too hard. There's a useful little formula that you might want to use when you're thinking about this, which is what, so what, now what. So what is the key fact or the key insight? The so what is why it matters to the audience. And the now what is what do you want them to actually do with that information? So focus on 2 or 3 key points and strip everything back. Ideally, real-world examples and analogies rather than just facts and figures. What does the data mean to the end user, to the customer, to the team, to the audience that you're engaging with? If you can stop it just being conceptual and start to make it human, you're going to get much more engagement. Mistake number 2 is skipping the drama. Sometimes I see people telling stories that are too smooth, they're too predictable. You're trying to make it kind of perfect. And life isn't like that. A great story has tension, there's conflicts, there's obstacles, there's things that the hero needs to overcome. And if we remove those emotional highs or lows, we lose our audience. So we don't want to have a series of this happened and then this happened and then this happened and we kind of get this kind of timeline and people start to switch off. We want to have that kind of compelling journey. The key telltale that you're making this mistake is an audience that is polite but not emotionally invested. When people don't really kind of react or engage with those key moments of your story, you know that you're not putting enough of that emotional connection in there. So it's presentations and pitches that lack moments of surprise. They lack suspense. They lack that contrast. And if that happens, then your audience very quickly start to switch off. So how do you fix it? Well, it's all about introducing those early stakes. You've got to paint a picture of what's at risk. What is the challenge that has to be overcome? And if you use contrast in that description, that kind of before and after, then you create a really vivid picture of transformation in your audience's mind. I'd encourage you as much as you can to tap into emotion, whether it's fear, excitement, relief. We've got to think about how we bring them on that journey. A really good question to ask: what would happen if this was in a movie, right? Every great story that you've ever watched has obstacles. Take a James Bond, for example. Bond doesn't just kind of wake up one day, we see him there and he goes and gets the baddie and then that's the end. He goes on these series of trials and tribulations, nearly gets the baddie, nearly gets the girl, nearly escapes, doesn't quite. And we need to feel that journey there, because if it just flatline, then it becomes really, really boring. Sorry to interrupt, but you know how it works. In the world of social media and online content, people only see the stuff the algorithm recommends, and the algorithm only recommends stuff that other people like and interact with. So if you found anything you've heard useful, please like, comment, and subscribe, and help me get it into the hands of as many people as possible. Let's get back to the good stuff. Mistake number 3 is making yourself the hero of the story. This happens a lot in a business context. We paint our company or our product or service as the savior. And in reality, people don't want you to be the hero. They want to be the hero. So we've got to be able to shift that so that the audience feels like they are at the center of the story, that you understand their struggles and the journey that they're going on. When you fail to connect your message to your audience's challenge or goals or emotions, you fail to connect them to what you're talking about. You know that you're making this mistake if you get feedback like, I don't really see how this applies to me. I don't understand what this means for us. That means that the audience can't imagine themselves in the narrative. They can't imagine or understand how what you're talking about relates to them. And that is an instant disconnect and will mean that your story just will not land. The fix is really simple and relatively counterintuitive. You have to switch from being the hero of the story to the guide. So you are Yoda, not Luke Skywalker. You are Dumbledore, not Harry Potter. So you've got to help your audience imagine themselves going through the trials and tribulations with you by their side, offering them advice, helping them discover the solution so that they win their battles and you are there to support them. The other thing to do is speak to the audience's pain points. So really start by addressing their fears, their frustrations, or their ambitions before you use or share your insight. And try and shift from the kind of I did this mode to here's how you can do this. And again, that will help your audience make that an imaginative leap into the story that you're telling. Mistake number 4 is ending without a so what. I see this all the time in a business context, that people seem to be telling a story for a story's sake, but we can't allow the audience to draw their own conclusions. There are 1 or 2 situations where you might want that to happen, but in the main, we want to make our audience really clear as to why we've told them the story, why it relates to them, and to help them take that key lesson and take that first step of action. So we've got to avoid assuming that the audience is naturally going to connect the dots. And instead, we need to start thinking about making that conclusion explicit. The big sign that you're making this mistake is that you tell the story and then people don't do anything. They just didn't know how it applied to them or what they should do about it. Or you get the sort of follow-up question, which is, so what should I do next? So fixing this one is pretty simple. You've just got to end with a clear takeaway. You've got to be able to articulate that call to action. Ask yourself, if the audience remembers just one thing, what should it be? Can you distill that story down into a single sentence? Is there a kind of advertising strapline that you could use that would summarize that key message? And if there is, then bring that into the story at that final moment so that it's really explicit what you want your audience to know. And mistake number 5 is not having a hippo. Well, not having a clear hook. I use that word at the beginning to grab your attention, to draw you in. And now I'm giving you the payoff right towards the end. So if we fail to grab our audience's attention in the first sort of 10 seconds, then the audience is very likely to disengage. They're going to be looking at something on their phone or thinking about what's coming up in their next meeting. We need to avoid those generic introductions, that credentializing or the unnecessary context instead of getting into something that is really compelling. Don't assume that your audience will stay engaged out of politeness. They've got too many things on their plates. Their brains are going off in so many different directions. So it's your job to grab their attention and hold them with you. Clear sign that you're making this mistake is not having your audience in the palm of your hand from the moment that you begin their story. If people are checking their phones or doing their emails or having a chat to the person next to them, it means that they're lost. So try not to warm up into your story and your narrative. You've got to jump straight in. The audience is not going to go with you if the interesting bit only happens halfway through. So we've got to get them with us from the offset. How do you do that? You could start with a question or a bold statement. There could be some sort of surprising fact. You've got to make them curious with that first sentence. Introduce the hippo. Think about it as a movie trailer. You've got to give people that kind of quick preview of what's coming up to build anticipations. Anything that starts to generate curiosity is going to mean that your audience is leaning in rather than leaning out. And you can use the hook to link to the pain points or the challenges that your audience has, which will make them say, this is relevant to me. This is worth listening to. So cut the fluff. It's the first 10 seconds that are essential in making sure that they are ready and listening. Now you know the 5 classic storytelling mistakes and what to do about them, but it counts for nothing unless you know how to make your audience feel something. Don't worry though, because you can learn how to do that by watching this video over here. If you've got questions or comments, please let me know. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.